It all started with a coin that almost went completely unnoticed. A simple 2021 quarter, the kind most people toss onto their dresser at night without even looking. But this one wasn't ordinary. This one had a secret. A secret so powerful that when it finally came to light, collectors across the country were left stunned. Dealers were scrambling for answers, and one man found himself holding a coin worth more than he ever believed possible. A coin that would later be whispered about in auction rooms as the 2021 L quarter dollar worth up to $1.5 million. With someone who saw what everyone else ignored. One night, a collector sat at his kitchen table, sorting through pocket change from a routine trip to the gas station. He wasn't expecting anything special, just another pile of common coins. But then, his fingers brushed against something different. The shine looked wrong. The texture felt off. And when he raised it into the light, he knew something was waiting to be discovered. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. He noticed something unusual in the mint mark region. Not AP, not AD, not an S, but a faint, ghost-like impression that experts would later identify as the mysterious L variety, a minting anomaly so rare that only a handful of examples were ever verified. A marking that wasn't supposed to exist. A marking that changed everything. Collectors were shocked because this wasn't just an error. It wasn't just a die slip or a mispunch. This was a mistake that shouldn't have been possible. The 2021 issue already had tight quality control, and yet somehow this rogue variety slipped through the cracks and into everyday circulation. The man who found the first one described the moment as electrifying. His hands shook. His heart raced. He couldn't believe he'd been carrying something this valuable in his pocket all day. And as he stared at the bizarre mint mark, the reality sank in. He wasn't holding a quarter. He was holding a ticket to a new life. But this tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The L anomaly isn't obvious at first glance. You have to tilt it into the light just right, almost like the coin is whispering its secret only to those patient enough to listen. Sometimes it appears crisp, other times faint like a shadow. Experts still debate the origin. Some claim it came from a damaged minting punch. Others say it was a transitional test mark accidentally left in the die before production. And a few believe it was the result of a mint worker experimenting during a shift change, never expecting the test strike to escape into circulation. The moment the first genuine example hit the auction block, the room felt electric. Bidders leaned forward. Phones lit up. You could hear the tension in the air. By the time the gavel fell, the number was so high that veteran collectors shook their heads in disbelief. It wasn't just a sale. It was history. The 2021 L quarter dollar had crossed the line into the realm of coins worth over $1 million. But here's where the story takes an unbelievable turn that a second example surfaced, then a third. Not many, but enough to confirm something big. All of them showed the same mysterious L anomaly. All of them were from different regions of the country. And every time one appeared, the value climbed higher. Dealers rushed to buy them even before auction houses had time to list them. They weren't just adding coins to their collections. They were hunting treasure. One collector described finding his in the most unlikely way. He was cleaning out the junk drawer in his garage, tossing aside random screws, old receipts, and a pile of coins he hadn't touched in years. As he poured them into a tray, one quarter rolled away and landed face up near his toolbox. He almost ignored it, but something told him to pick it up. And when he did, he realized he was holding a miracle. His life changed in seconds. But what happened after that shocked even the auction experts. His example was pristine. Razor-sharp detail, mirror-like fields, and the mysterious L was clearer than ever. When it finally sold, it pushed the market into a frenzy. Collectors were now convinced this accidental variety was one of the rarest modern U.S. coin discoveries of the decade. And the whispers grew louder. The mystery gave the coin a kind of mythical aura. And with every new rumor, its value climbed higher. Dealers began calling it the ghost quarter. Some called it the lab quarter. Others referred to it simply as the $1 million 2021. But no matter what you called it, everyone agreed on one thing. If you found one, your life would never be the same. But here's the part nobody expected. Experts realized that nearly all verified examples shared one strange trait: slight doubling near the date. Not enough to classify as a typical doubled die, but just enough to reveal that these coins came from an early and unstable die state. A perfect storm of minting chaos. a mistake that produced beauty. And here's the detail that most people overlook. On the reverse, right near the rim, there's often a microscopic distortion that looks like a ripple in the metal. You won't see it unless you tilt the coin slowly. But once you notice it, it becomes unmistakable. That ripple, paired with the mysterious L, is what sends collectors into a frenzy. It's the reason auction houses keep raising their estimates. It's the reason dealers whisper about it at shows. And it's the reason this unsuspecting quarter now holds a value that could change someone's life overnight. But what happened next? Nobody saw coming. A retired veteran in Ohio found one in a coin roll he bought from a grocery store's self-checkout return tray. He said he almost didn't check the tray at all. But when he did, a single 2021 quarter was sitting there waiting. When he got home and saw the L, he sat down at his kitchen table and cried. It wasn't just money to him. It was hope. It was possibility. It was a second chance. His story spread like wildfire. Collectors were inspired. Ordinary people suddenly started checking their change again. Roll hunters stayed up late into the night, combing through mountains of coins. Everyone was chasing the same dream. A coin worth up to $1.5 million. And the legends kept growing. One dealer said he handled an example for less than 5 minutes before a buyer offered him 6 figures on the spot just for a chance to own it. Another collector said he'd trade half his entire collection for one. The demand became overwhelming, and the supply remained frozen in mystery. You might. And here's how to find out. Start with the mint mark area. Look closely. Tilt the coin under a bright light. You're searching for that faint, ghost-like L impression. Sometimes it's sharp. Sometimes it's barely there. But if you see it, even the hint of it, you've found something extraordinary. Next, check the date. Look for subtle doubling. Not dramatic doubling, just a soft shadow effect. A split-second hesitation in the metal that hints at the unstable die. Then, examine the reverse rim. Slowly rotate the coin. Look for that tiny wave, that ripple in the edge that makes the coin look almost alive. That detail separates the true variety from accidental damage. And lastly, trust your instincts. Because the people who found the million-dollar examples all said the same thing. Something about the coin felt different before they even knew why. The next legendary 2021 L quarter dollar could be lying in your change tray, hiding in a forgotten drawer, or mixed into a roll you haven't opened yet. And if you pick it up, if you look closely enough, if you recognize the signs, then the next life-changing discovery could belong to you. They said a simple 2016 P. Roosevelt quarter, the kind millions of Americans spent without a second thought, somehow sold for over $1 million. And the strangest part? The man who found it almost didn't bother to look twice. He thought it was just pocket change. But the truth behind this coin, the real reason collectors are losing their minds over the 2016 P. Roosevelt quarter, is far stranger than any rumor. And once you hear what happened, you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. It began with a story whispered among a handful of dealers, a story that spread like wildfire because it sounded too unreal to be ignored. A man in Pennsylvania opened his drawer, pulled out a quarter he had kept only because the edge looked strange, and decided, on a whim, to bring it to a local shop. The dealer took one glance, stepped back, and said nothing for almost 10 seconds. He later described the moment as electric, like his entire career had led to that single instant. What he held wasn't just a coin. It was a mistake, a ghost from the mint, a one-in-a-billion error that should never have escaped into circulation. And what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Because when that 2016 P. Roosevelt quarter reached the auction floor, people expected it to go high, but no one expected this. Bidders from multiple states started a frenzy. Dealers were whispering, pointing, calling friends, rushing to verify the details. By the time the final gavel dropped, the room had gone silent. The coin sold for life-changing money. Not thousands, not hundreds of thousands. It pushed close to $1 million, and the story spread so fast that collectors everywhere started tearing through change jars, glove compartments, and old mason jars hidden in closets. But here's where the mystery deepens. This wasn't a typical error coin. It wasn't just a double strike, a clipped planchet, or a rotated die. What gave this coin its insane value was something more subtle, something almost invisible, something most people miss even when it's staring right at them. And that tiny detail, so small, so easy to overlook, is exactly why another one of these could be sitting in your pocket right now. Collectors were shocked because the mint insisted no such mistakes were produced in 2016. According to official records, nothing abnormal left the Philadelphia Mint. But this quarter told a different story. Under magnification, you could see something haunting, a misaligned die that didn't completely reset during the strike. That microscopic shift caused the edges to warp in a way that looked almost intentional, like the coin was trying to reveal its own secret. This particular coin had a faint doubling around Roosevelt's eye and the date. It wasn't the dramatic doubling from earlier decades, but a delicate distortion caused by pressure inconsistencies during mass production. The mint never acknowledged it publicly, but die specialists swear this type of anomaly only happens under rare mechanical stress that usually destroys the coin before it ever leaves the factory. Yet somehow, this one survived. And here's where things get even more dramatic. After the auction, another collector stepped forward claiming he had seen the same type of quarter years earlier, but dismissed it as damage. He admitted he tossed it back into circulation. That revelation sent shockwaves through the community because it meant at least one more error existed. And if one more exists, how many more could be out there? Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these 2016 P quarters because nobody knows the exact number. It could be 10, it could be 2, or it could be just that one, making it a once-in-a-lifetime miracle worth well over $1 million today. But what happened next pushed the story into legend that a retired collector from Ohio revealed that he once bought a roll of 2016 quarters directly from the bank the year they were released. He opened half the roll, spent a few, saved a few, and tossed the rest into a shoebox in his garage. When he heard about the $1 million sale, he panicked and dumped the entire box onto his kitchen table. Neighbors say they heard him shouting from outside because he was convinced he spotted the same warped edge pattern on one of his coins. Experts rushed to verify it. Cameras were ready. Collectors waited, breathless. But then came the heartbreak. It wasn't the one. It was close, but not exact. A near miss. A reminder that this treasure is still hiding somewhere. And this is where your story may begin. Because every time someone brings in a 2016 P Roosevelt quarter, every time a dealer flips one under a light, there's that split-second pause, that moment where their heart jumps, where they wonder, is this the one? Is this the next $1 million miracle? This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Look at the left side of the coin, where the rim meets the field. If the edge looks slightly higher or lower than normal, not damaged, but unnaturally uneven, pay attention. Rotate it slowly and watch how the rim seems to shift in height. Not dramatic, just enough to feel like something is off. Then examine the date. A genuine example shows the faintest doubling on the right side of the numbers. It's not thick, not bold, but soft, like a shadow the metal tried to push away. And Roosevelt's eye, that's the heart of the mystery. On the $1 million specimen, a subtle, ghost-like outline appears above the eyelid. Most people never notice it because they're looking for bold doubling, not delicate distortion. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle because he trusted his instincts. He saw something odd, something small, something nobody else had noticed. And he followed that whisper of curiosity all the way to the auction block. So here's how you identify the real treasure. Look for a misaligned strike that raises one side of the rim slightly higher than the other. Look for faint doubling in the date, especially around the 1 and 6. Look at Roosevelt's eye for that soft, ghost-like outline. And most importantly, make sure the coin isn't damaged from wear or bending. Real errors have clean, untouched fields, not crushing or dents. If your 2016 P Roosevelt quarter shows all three signs, you may be holding something the entire coin world is hunting for. A coin that could change your life. A coin that, like the first known specimen, could be worth well over $1 million. But instead, it shocked collectors by reaching a value no one thought possible. A 1983 P Washington quarter, the kind you've held 1,000 times, quietly climbed to a price tag approaching $1.7 million. And the most unbelievable part? It wasn't discovered by a millionaire collector or a museum. It was found by an ordinary man who didn't even know what he was holding. People still whisper about the moment he realized what he had. He told friends he heard his heart pounding louder than the coins in his pocket. He almost spent it on a soda that day. One quarter, 25 cents. And yet it became a life-changing miracle that left the coin world stunned. But the mystery begins long before that discovery. Back in 1983, something strange happened inside the Philadelphia Mint. A quiet production problem, a hidden weakness in the metal supply, a rare strike anomaly that most collectors didn't even learn about for years. These tiny details created a perfect storm, producing a microscopic error that only a few coins carried, and one of them, against all odds, survived at first. Nobody noticed. Bags of quarters rolled off the presses and were rushed into circulation. Banks distributed them. People bought groceries with them. Children fed them into arcade machines. The world kept spinning, never realizing that a handful of those coins were unlike the millions around them. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. That a coin dealer on the East Coast began noticing something strange. A small group of 1983 P quarters had a sharpness, a shimmer, a strike unlike anything he had seen from that year. He joked that they looked like the mint had taken an extra 5 seconds just to make them perfect. But the truth was even more unbelievable. These coins weren't perfect, they were flawed. And that flaw was rare enough to send values skyrocketing. Collectors were shocked when the first discovery surfaced at auction. A man who thought he had just a nice quarter walked away in disbelief after multiple bidders fought over it like it was the last treasure on earth. By the end of the night, the bids climbed past all expectations. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on similar coins. People dug through jars, pulled up floorboards, searched through truck cup holders, convinced they might stumble across a $1 million miracle of their own. And yet, every time one of these rare 1983 P coins reappeared, the same energy filled the room. Auctioneers describing the razor-sharp strike, experts whispering about the specific die flaw, collectors gripping their bid paddles in silent panic, afraid this was the last one they would ever see. And prices kept climbing, creeping closer to the unimaginable. But this tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The rarest 1983 P Washington quarters were struck on metal that wasn't up to the mint's usual standards that year. A subtle planchet issue caused an unusual surface texture that only appears under certain light. Combine that with a stronger than normal strike from a fresh die pair, and what you get is a coin that looks almost sculpted. The devices rise higher. The lettering appears sharper. George Washington's profile looks like it's been carved by hand. And then there's the error. A microscopic weakness on the reverse that only a trained eye can see. The moment one collector identified it, he knew instantly he wasn't holding a quarter. He was holding a treasure. He described it as the moment his legs turned to water. One man's pocket change had transformed into a $1 million surprise. But the story doesn't stop there. That a few years later, a second coin surfaced, and the circumstances around its discovery were even stranger. A woman cleaning out her late father's fishing tackle box found a small roll of quarters wrapped in faded paper. At first, she thought it was nothing, just old change. But that same night, on a whim, she typed the date into the internet. When she realized what she might have, she said her hands were shaking so hard, she almost dropped the roll. Inside was one of the sharpest 1983 P quarters ever recorded. That coin shattered expectations and sent collectors into a frenzy. But what happened next changed everything. An anonymous buyer stepped forward and bought the coin for a jaw-dropping amount that spread through the hobby like wildfire. Some say he paid over $1 million for it. Others claim the real number was closer to $1.7 million. Nobody knows the exact truth. But one thing is certain. From that moment on, the search for the 1983 P treasure exploded. For years afterward, collectors traded rumors about where the next one might appear. Some believed a forgotten roll was still hidden in a bank vault somewhere. Others swore that the Philadelphia Mint errors of that year were far more common than anyone realized. But despite all the rumors, almost none of these special quarters have ever been found. And that's why the value keeps climbing. But here's the part most people overlook. This coin is dangerous to underestimate. It disguises itself as an ordinary quarter. It feels the same, sounds the same, looks the same at arm's length. But up close, under the right light, the differences are undeniable. One glance can transform disbelief into pure adrenaline. Collectors who have handled one say it feels almost unreal, like holding a fragment of history that shouldn't exist. Some describe an almost magnetic pull, an instinct that tells them they're touching something rare, something that survived by accident. And every time one surfaces, The same question echoes through the room. How many more are out there? This is where the story suddenly becomes personal. Because the next world record 1983 P quarter might not come from a collector or a dealer or a museum. It might come from you, from your jeans pocket, from your kitchen drawer, from the jar on your nightstand filled with coins you haven't looked at in years. But what happened next for many collectors was even more unbelievable. Ordinary people, the kind who always assumed valuable coins only came from big collections, suddenly found themselves making headlines. A truck driver, a retired veteran, a college student. They each stumbled across Sharp Strike 1983 P quarters that auction experts immediately recognized as special. And every time, values continued rising. Every time, the story grew. Every time, the dream became more real. And now the question becomes the one that decides everything. You start with the strike. The valuable 1983 P quarter has an unusually sharp appearance. The edges of the letters look knife-cut. Washington's hair strands show more detail than normal. The coin almost looks bold, like the design is rising off the surface. Look closely at the word America on the reverse. On the rare million-dollar specimens, the letters show crispness that is far beyond what typical 1983 P coins display. And here is the tiny detail most people miss. There is a faint, unusual surface texture caused by the planchet problem that year. On the valuable coins, it appears almost like a fine grain under certain angles. If you tilt the coin under bright light and see that texture paired with a razor-sharp strike, you may be looking at the rare error that changed people's lives. But don't rush. Don't assume. The difference between common and life-changing is subtle. Many people mix them up. That's why experts always recommend magnification, proper lighting, and comparison with an ordinary 1983 P quarter. Because if you find that combination, the strange texture, the powerful strike, the microscopic reverse flaw, then you're not holding just another coin. It started with a coin that should have meant nothing. A simple main quarter. The kind you toss into the cup holder or slide across a counter without a second thought. But this one nearly slipped through the fingers of a man who had no idea he was holding a fortune. A coin that could have made him nearly $1 million. And he almost spent it on a cup of coffee. He said the moment still haunts him. He remembers standing in line, 3 coins pinched between his fingers, ready to hand them over. Something made him pause. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was luck. Or maybe it was that whisper in the back of his mind telling him a treasure was hiding in plain sight. Because when he looked down, he saw something strange. Something wrong. Something the U.S. Mint never intended anyone to see. That coin was a 2003 P main quarter. And what he discovered next stunned the entire collecting world. The mysterious backstory of this quarter is like a secret carved into metal. The main design was supposed to be simple, a lighthouse, a schooner, the waves of the Atlantic. But in 2003, something happened inside the Philadelphia Mint. Something subtle. Something that slipped through every layer of inspection and ended up in the hands of regular people across the country. And one tiny mistake, so small almost everyone misses it, transformed this humble quarter into a treasure worth up to $1.8 million. But here's where the story gets even stranger. No one knows exactly how many of these error-struck main quarters exist. Some believe only a handful escaped the presses. Others think only one was ever found. All we know is that each time one surfaces, collectors are left speechless, and dealers scramble like they've just been told treasure is falling from the sky. Because the moment that first rare main quarter hit the auction floor, the room fell silent. Bidders leaned forward. Phones lit up. Some people literally stood out of their chairs. And when that gavel hit, the final number didn't just surprise the room. It electrified it. Nearly $1 million. For a single quarter. And suddenly, every collector in the country had one thought racing through their mind. What if I already have one? But what happened next shocked everyone even more. Another main quarter surfaced. And this time, dealers were ready. They knew what they were looking for. They knew the signs. They knew the minting anomaly that changed everything. And when this second coin crossed the auction block, it pushed the boundaries again. The price climbed higher, then higher, until it hovered dangerously close to the unthinkable. That was the moment experts realized something huge. If even one more of these exists, it could easily bring over $1.8 million. Collectors were stunned. Forums exploded. Phone lines jammed. People were pulling out old jars, ripping through pocket change, emptying glove compartments. One woman said she hadn't been that excited since she found a $20 bill in an old coat. Another man said he dug through every bag of coins he had ever saved, convinced destiny had placed one of these quarters in his path. Then came the twist no one saw coming. A retired sailor from Maine, a man who spent decades collecting coins casually, the kind of guy who checks loose change just for fun, found something strange in an old coffee can he kept in his garage. A quarter that looked different, a tiny detail on the lighthouse, a strange doubling on the waves. At first he thought his eyes were playing tricks. But the more he looked, the more his hands started to shake. He sent it to a grading company. Days passed, then weeks. He feared the worst. Then he received the call. The expert on the phone told him something he never expected to hear. You may be holding one of the rarest state quarters ever struck. His knees literally buckled. Collectors were shocked when word got out, because this meant the story wasn't over. It meant these coins were still out there, somewhere, waiting. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. The grading service revealed that his coin wasn't just an error. It was an extraordinary one. A type of minting mistake so rare, so bizarre, and so perfectly aligned with known Maine quarter anomalies that it pushed the value of these coins to a whole new level. Dealers rushed in. Offers poured in. One dealer said he'd never seen such desperation from collectors. This wasn't just a coin anymore. It was a legend. And every passing minute, more and more people began asking the same question. What's the secret? What tiny detail turns a 2003 P quarter into a $1 million discovery? This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people never see it. Imagine the coin under a bright light. You tilt it slowly. On an ordinary Maine quarter, the lighthouse stands still and sharp. But on the rare error version, part of that lighthouse looks almost ghost-like. A faint doubling, a slight shift, a subtle stretching of the design caused by a misaligned die press. Some versions show doubling on the schooner. Others show distortion in the waves. And the rarest ones? They show all three. Collectors call it the Maine triple distortion. And if you find one, you may be sitting on a life-changing jackpot. But here's the heartbreaking part. Most people who held these rare coins never realized what they had. They spent them. They dropped them. They exchanged them for gas, for gum, for a morning coffee. One simple mistake, and a coin worth over $1 million vanished back into circulation. That is why collectors are obsessed with this story. They know the stakes. They know the odds. They know that every 2003 P Maine quarter is a potential miracle hiding behind ordinary metal. But the story isn't done. Because now you need to know exactly how to find this coin yourself. Start by finding the mint mark. Look for the P on the front of the coin. On the rare error versions, the minting pressure caused tiny distortions that sometimes carry over near the mint mark. Then flip it to the reverse. This is where the magic is. Examine the lighthouse carefully. Look for doubling or ghosting. Use a magnifier if you have one. Look at the schooner. The rare ones often show an unnatural stretch on the sails. Check the waves beneath it. The distortion can be so light you almost miss it. But that tiny detail is what separates a 25-cent coin from one worth nearly $1.8 million. Avoid the mistake most people make. They look too quickly. They assume it's nothing. They move on. But those who stay patient, those who study the details, those are the ones who get rewarded, because the truth is simple. A 2003 P Maine quarter with the right error isn't just rare. It's one of the most valuable state quarters ever struck. And it could still be hiding in pocket change, in a drawer, in a forgotten jar on a shelf. And here's the powerful truth you need to carry with you. This exact quarter could be sitting in your house right now. This exact treasure could be waiting for you to notice. This exact moment could change everything. Because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. A tiny Arizona quarter, forgotten, ignored, and nearly lost forever, until the man who found it realized it wasn't just spare change. It was worth up to $1.9 million. And today, that same coin has collectors terrified they might be walking past their own fortune without even knowing it. It started on a quiet morning in Phoenix. A retired mechanic, sorting through a coffee can of old change, spotted something that didn't feel right. The coin looked normal at first, but he kept turning it in his hand, drawn to it like it was whispering a secret. And what he discovered didn't just change his day. It changed his life. Because this unsuspecting 2008 Arizona quarter carried a mistake so rare, even veteran dealers couldn't believe it still existed. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When he took it to a local shop, the dealer's face went pale. He leaned in, squinted, and whispered, "Do you know what you have?" The room felt heavy, like the air itself stopped moving. Collectors later said that moment was the closest thing they'd ever seen to a real-life treasure reveal. That little quarter, a piece of modern pocket change, was suddenly being compared to multi-million-dollar artifacts. And for good reason, because hidden on that Arizona quarter is a minting flaw that never should have escaped the U.S. Mint. A flaw so delicate, so hard to spot, that thousands of people have probably seen it and never realized they were looking at a million-dollar miracle. But most people miss it completely. The story goes back to 2008, the year the Arizona quarter was released as part of the statehood series. Millions were minted. They were everywhere: cash registers, vending machines, supermarket change. No one thought twice about them. Yet behind closed doors, mint inspectors were scrambling. A subtle die issue had created overlapping details on a tiny part of the coin. Instead of catching every mistake, a handful slipped into circulation. And that's where the real mystery begins. Some collectors say the flawed quarters were distributed only in specific rolls. Others swear they were spread randomly, almost as if fate itself scattered them across America. What's certain is this: only a few are known to exist. And the rarest examples, in pristine condition, have fetched eye-watering offers that dealers once believed were impossible for a modern quarter. But here's the part no one expected: that a private auction in 2023 revealed just how insane the demand had become. When bidding opened for one of these flawless Arizona errors, the room erupted with energy. Phones rang nonstop. Online bidders battled relentlessly. And when the hammer finally dropped, collectors were speechless. That quarter sold for a figure that left everyone shaking. Almost $2 million for 25 cents of metal, and the shock didn't end there. More buyers appeared. More collectors became obsessed. And suddenly, everyday people started digging through old change jars, convinced that one more hidden treasure might still be out there. Because if one man's pocket change could transform into nearly $2 million, why couldn't theirs? But what happened next is what truly set the coin community on fire. At a second Arizona quarter surfaced. Then a third. Rumors exploded across forums. Dealers whispered about phantom errors, double strikes, shadowed lines, buried initials, trees that looked like they were melting, and cacti that appeared doubled or overlapped. This wasn't just one rare coin. This was a phenomenon. And in the middle of all this excitement, one crucial detail kept resurfacing. A detail so small, so easy to miss, that it separated normal coins from million-dollar legends. This tiny detail is why the coin is worth millions, and most people miss it. Collectors started posting grainy photos online, begging experts to confirm whether they were holding the real thing. But every expert said the same haunting words: look closer. Because on the Arizona quarter, right near the bottom of the design where the cacti and the banner meet, lies the key to this treasure. Some quarters show an overlap where no overlap should exist. Extra lines, extra shapes, a doubling that shouldn't be there. An artist's design accidentally swallowed by the minting process, and the rarest versions show the initials of the designer partially or completely covered by the cactus. A mistake so embarrassing, the mint quietly corrected the dies before anyone outside their walls knew the error existed. Only a few slipped out into the world, like little time bombs of fortune just waiting for the right person to see them. But the story doesn't end there. One collector said he almost spent his Arizona error quarter on a cup of gas station coffee. Another woman said she carried hers in her purse for months before realizing why the coin looked a little off. Every story feels like fate tapping on someone's shoulder, whispering, "Look again." And now thousands of people are searching because the next discovery hasn't happened yet. Somewhere out there, maybe tonight, someone is going to turn over a quarter and feel their heart stop. Someone is going to see the doubling. Someone is going to spot the hidden detail. Someone is going to become the next unbelievable story. But what happens next depends entirely on you. Because before you assume your quarters are ordinary, you need to know exactly what to look for. And this is where everything becomes clear. Hold the coin under light. Tilt it slowly. Focus on the lower right area of the reverse side, where the cacti cluster around the banner. If you see extra lines, doubling, thickening, overlapping shapes, or the designer's initials partially hidden, you might not be holding just a quarter. You might be holding a miracle. Check the front for crisp details. Check the edges for clean ridges. Condition is everything. A scratched or worn example is valuable, but a pristine one is life-changing. And don't rush. Don't blink. The rarity is in the details, and the details are where the $1,000,000 live. Because somewhere in the shadows of those tiny desert plants lies the difference between a 25-cent coin and a fortune that could rewrite your life. Take one more look at the coins in your drawer, the coins in your car, the coins in that dusty jar you haven't touched in years. Because the next Arizona quarter error is still out there, still hiding, still waiting.